You're listening to another great podcast in the iMac Podcasting Network.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the show where we take a wander around the week in Apple news, reviews, technology, associated products, and all sorts of other things that catch our eye. This is another episode of the Essential Apple Podcast. Hello everybody, welcome to this week's episode. And this week I am joined by Vic Hudson, who has been on before, of course, and he is a veteran of Pragmatic and Bubblesort, and now the new Bubblesort TV, the pocket-sized podcast, and a whole load of other things. So look in the show notes and you can find all the sorts of things that Vic gets up to. How are you, Vic, after our traumatic failure to make the technology work?
I'm having some technical difficulties here, but I'm good.
Okay. And I am joined by Nick Riley, one of my regular co-hosts. How are you, Nick?
I'm very well, thanks, Simon.
All right.
Good to be on.
Yep.
Glad we got everything working.
Well,
most things working.
Most things seem to be working.
Most people have most things working.
Yeah, Vic is suffering a technological meltdown, I think, of some sort. But anyway, well, thanks for coming on, boys. This week, there's quite a lot of news. There are rumours galore, of course, circulating about the new iPhones and possible new Macs and all sorts, but I don't pay too much attention to them. So I've tried to collect together a selection of stories which actually have some depth rather than just such and such says. Well, I suppose we should start off, shouldn't we, with the big news, really, in Apple, which this week is the 20th anniversary of the introduction of the iMac.
20 years.
20 years, yes. And so
that's pretty big.
That's pretty big. I mean, 20 years is quite a long time in anything, and 20 years in technology is a very, very long time. And I'd say 20 years of maintaining a single brand in technology is, very much a big thing. So, yes, it was 20 years this week since Steve Jobs did the Hello Again presentation where the Bondi Blue iMac was revealed. So there we go. Happy birthday, iMac. We've come quite a long way. There we go.
Do you know? I remember seeing these in the shops and thinking, "Oh, they're unusual looking things," but they didn't attract me at the time. I must admit, it wasn't until 2007 I got my first iMac. But they were certainly different, weren't they? Because everything else was a beige box at the time.
Oh yeah, everything at the time was basically beige boxes, and I remember the not so much the launch, although I did watch the launch if I recall. But the fact, maybe not the first one, the Bondi Blue one. I knew a lot of people, who did, certainly when the second iteration came out, because the first iteration had a tray DVD, didn't it? Or it was a CD actually. I don't think it was a DVD, was it?
I think it was just a CD.
It was just a CD, wasn't it? And it had a pop-open flap.
And no floppy drive. Yeah.
And I think on the second iteration, the multicoloured, the fruit gum flavoured ones, they introduced a slot drive. And at that point, I know a lot of people, and of course intrigued by the colours, a lot of people went to iMac bonkers at that point.
There's an awful lot of us, aren't there, who have probably had tray load CD or DVD players where we've put something in and then it's made horrible sounds.
Yeah.
And then we've had to try and somehow extricate whatever has gone wrong inside.
Okay.
I remember it from my PC days. I've never had a Mac that actually had the tray on it, though.
No.
Well, I have the last tray loading DVD Mac I had was the Mac Pro, which had the option for two optic drives. I didn't have two optical drives in it, but it had the option for two optical drives. But that had a tray load. When you did eject, the little metal door slid down and the tray came out.
Yeah.
Which was very nice until it started sticking. And then I
Yes.
used to have to sort of remember.
Did you find the paper clip to stuff in that little hole?
Well,
for
no.
the,
When I say
release?
sticking, the little slide down Thunderbird style door would stick and catch on the tray and make the tray go back in. So I had to.
Oh, yeah, I got you.
I used to have to. It was quite old by that point, but you used to have to slide the metal door down a little bit with your finger to make sure it didn't catch on the tray, because the tray, being push sensitive, if it caught the door, would just go back in again. So
Those were the days.
yeah. Yeah, so there we go. And I remember the different coloured ones. You know, the strawberry, lime, grape, blueberry. I think those were very popular. Tangerine, I think one. There we go. 20 years. It's almost unbelievable, actually. Frightening. That 20 years have gone past since we were looking at those with envy. There. So there we are. Apparently, according to Six Colours, Jason Snell, the group FaceTime calling has been delayed until later this fall, and I believe it's been pulled out of the betas. I don't know what to say about that, really. I mean, they've kept FaceTime as one-to-one for such a long time, and then they finally announced group FaceTime calling and went bonkers, didn't they? And it's like 32 participants.
Yeah. I'm a little disappointed by that pull, actually, because we were all looking forward. Well, many podcasters were looking forward to using it for our recordings.
Yes, obviously,
because we could move away from things like Skype and
Wire and Discord, and
we've been using Mumble for Bubblesort recently, and it seems to be working well. But we look forward to the simplicity of FaceTime.
Well, yes, definitely. I mean,
let's hope so. I mean, we don't really know until it comes, do we? Whether it's going to be
it could
a panacea.
be.
We hope it will be.
Well, that's true. And it could also turn out to be, you remember AirPlay 2. It technically came out. It did come out in the iOS 11, 1 week before the WWDC when they announced iOS 12. And
that is true.
I'm sure we'd all prefer for them to actually get it right and have it work really well than
that is correct.
Heartbreak, so.
Oh yes, definitely. I mean, exactly as they say here. Oh, it's this article is actually by Dan Moran. There's no inherent problem with taking a little longer to make sure this feature is fully baked. A late feature which works as intended will trump an on-time feature which is broken. I think that's what we all agree. It's slightly disappointing because much as I like Wire, it does occasionally play up, as it has done for Vic today. Discord is Discord is quite technically challenging for a lot of guests because it's not. Well, if you've not used Discord, and even if you have, I find Discord, if you don't use it regularly, it is actually quite a complicated piece of kit to set up. I know podcasting wasn't its original intent, so, I'm not necessarily bagging on it for that. But
yeah, it's from the gamer community,
yes,
isn't it?
It is. I mean, it comes from the same sort of background as Mumble or TeamSpeak or Ventrilo. And so, I mean, it's targeted much more at sort of walkie-talkie type communication. Ventrilo certainly was, because obviously it's for gamers. So there we are.
But the fact is, if they can get group FaceTime to work simply and reliably, that will please most people, won't it?
Well, that would please a lot of people for a lot of reasons, not just podcasters. Obviously, I'm sure there are a lot of people who would like to be able to have a group, FaceTime chat where they can have grandma and grandma in Australia and daughter in America and whatever, and rather than only being able to call one-to-one. I'm sure that would be nice. So
I wonder whether there doesn't seem to be any information, but I wonder whether it's a technical issue or whether it's a anticipated usage thing, a bandwidth issue. Or it'd be interesting to know a little bit deeper exactly why it's been delayed rather than just that it has. But it'd be interesting because obviously they're going to get a lot more traffic, aren't they?
Yes.
When they introduce it, I would think.
You would think, if only to start with, in like when a new pub opens, and even the people who don't normally go to the pub have a tendency to go there on opening night just to see what it's all about.
Just to try it out. Yeah,
yes,
exactly.
So I could imagine there being a big spike in the first week or so as everybody gives it a go. Indeed, I don't know. Well, as it says here, this raises some eyebrows about why the company can't seem to deliver the features as originally promised. But I don't know. 32 seems a little ambitious, didn't it? Why 32?
Yeah. This is always going to be a problem, though, isn't it? When they pre-announce things. I mean, if we go back a few years, they never did that. They would always announce it, and they'd say it'll be available this week or next week.
I know.
Yeah, wait till it's fully cooked first.
Yeah. So, but they've changed over the last few years and started to pre-announce things, and then they get criticised for not delivering it when they promise that they will. It's a vicious circle because people would like to know what's coming up, but at the same time they get penalised if they don't deliver exactly when they say it's going to come.
Yeah. That is a bit of a you're on the horns of a dilemma, aren't you? Do you especially when you're being criticised for maybe not bringing out very much stuff, as it were. You know, is it, well, this isn't really ready, but we haven't really got a lot of other things to talk about. So perhaps we better pre-announce, so we've got this fabulous new feature, but it won't be ready yet. The trouble with that is, Microsoft always used to do that, and then a lot of the things they announced never ever appeared. They would fall by the wayside because they would announce things that turned out to be technologically, too difficult or economically.
Well, in some ways, Apple are suffering with that problem as well, aren't they? With the charging pads. So
yes.
Hopefully it will arrive at some point. They have promised it.
Yeah. In fact, if you look in the notes I've got in the Worth of Chirps, you will find something sort of related to that. But there we are. And talking about things being speculatively pre-announced, as it were, Ming Chi Kuo, who I was led to believe was going to stop, prognosticating about Apple, and has done no such thing, to be honest, has told us that AR glasses are coming in 2020 and the Apple Car will launch it 3 to 5 years later. Well,
no,
thank you.
In a word, no.
Pure and utter speculation, I am sure.
The AR glasses, we really don't know about, do we? And that's possible in that time frame, I would have thought. But launching a car, that takes time. Look at how Tesla have struggled. If you were going to launch a car and you're going to do it 3 to 5 years beyond 2020, that's still not far away, is it?
It's not very far away.
No.
That's 5 to 7 years, really.
Yeah, not that Apple haven't got the money to do it if they wanted to, but it's not just about money, is it?
No.
It's about organisation and just the sheer size of producing cars. It's a big thing. Unless you're going to produce a handful of very, very expensive ones.
Well, in addition to the R&D time, they have to set up a production run facility, and they have, to my knowledge, then unless they're doing it underneath the spaceship, they haven't made any noise about doing that. Nobody knows of them doing that anywhere.
That's what John
They can't set that kind of shop up overnight.
You cannot hide the kind of facility required to produce cars in any volume. Last week, Mark speculated that maybe if they were going to do such a thing, that once they were ready, that they maybe would approach, an established manufacturer to make, maybe get whoever. He suggested Tata, but I would think somebody else. But, basically approach somebody else to make somebody who already has the, the facilities and the supply chains and whatnot to produce it as a for Apple, if they were going to do such a thing as an Apple car. I really don't know about the car. I could imagine that Apple are working on all sorts of things. The glasses, well, I think most people know that I'm pretty keen on that idea, and Uncle Tim has implied that he is very interested in that area, and to suggest maybe 2 years out, I think I could make a suggestion like that. I don't think you need to be, an industry analyst to take a stab at that one. So,
and it's understandable that people still talking about cars because they still keep talking about Project Titan. So, but quite what Project Titan is remains to be seen.
It does indeed.
Yeah.
Well, we got. He's an analyst.
It's all still under the super secret tarp.
Indeed, it is. And Ming Chi Kuo, he's quite good at putting out suggestions. Although, I know that he knows what he's talking about in the realms of, studying the industry, but realistically, I don't think his predictions are much better than many other people's, truth be told. But then he gets paid to make these speculations and convince people that he knows what he's talking about. So there we go. To me, it might be interesting to read, but I wouldn't put any stock in it myself.
But it's thinking about the way Apple works. I mean, probably Apple probably won't produce a car unless they can be the only car on the road, and they won't share the road with other cars.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
We'll see.
Yes, we will have to see. I'll tell you what, leading on, I'm going to jump down the thing a bit here. I'm going to do, I had just a snippet, because it's related to robot cars, and that says robot cars start delivering groceries in Arizona. And this one was on The Verge. And it caught my eye, of course, because John Nemo lives in Arizona, and I was going to say, are you going to get your have your deliveries by robot car, John?
Well, why wouldn't he? Wouldn't you like to have robot cars delivering your groceries?
I don't have my groceries delivered, but I suppose if I did, I might like a robot car. Groceries.
I saw a little video of these things, and they're quite cool actually. My understanding is at the moment they're being tested with a driver on board, but
well, at the moment, although the picture shows one of those sort of giant suitcase on wheels with just two lift up doors.
That's the one I've actually seen a little video of it. Yeah.
At first, the groceries will be delivered via Nero's fleet of self-driving Toyota Prius and Nissan Leaf vehicles.
Which they've got a picture of below that as well.
Yep. And each car will have to have a safety driver behind the wheel. But later this fall, the company plans on swapping in the R1 driverless delivery vehicle. So there you go.
Didn't we talk about this a couple of weeks ago?
We did.
We were talking about them having laser defences on the vehicles. And...
Well, I think the one. The picture of this one. This is actually a moderate-sized sort of delivery car, isn't it? The ones we were talking about.
Yes, for tiny.
Well, the little ones that are like the size of like a beach cool box type size. The
six wheel things.
That deliver pizzas and whatnot. Or maybe a 6-pack of beers. I don't know. Yeah, because I think that was John, wasn't it? Saying we're getting robbed. People screwdrivering them open to run off with the pizzas.
That was it. In all honesty, though, this one looks a little bit. I quite often have Amazon Now deliveries, and they just come in normal cars. So these things would be ideal for that kind of thing.
Yes, very much so.
I gotta say, I like the little picture, the little car in this picture.
Yeah, very neat. And I could actually imagine in a way or foresee these being the forerunner of, fully autonomous passenger cars. Because if people start running those...
is this picture the actual car they're using?
No, lower down.
Okay, I was going to say, where's the safety driver going to actually sit?
No, that's what they're saying. That's the R1, which
they're very, very thin
have to be...
drivers.
They have a very specialist recruitment agency to find very small, very
he's sitting with
people.
the produce in that first hole.
No, then what they're saying is they're going to be using Nissan Leafs and Toyota Priuses with a driver in, and then later, I assume when they're happy that the technology works properly, they are going to swap in their robotic R1 delivery vehicles.
Okay.
But yeah, I could imagine those being, in some ways, I can imagine that sort of thing becoming the enabler, if you like, because you could have those things, fully autonomous delivery vehicles,
Mm-hmm.
they're probably going to be relatively limited in speed. They have no passengers, so from a safety point of view, should one crash, there's not going to be blood spilled. There might be milk or juice or something.
Well, you don't cry over the spilled milk.
Exactly. But I just think things like that they normalise it, don't they? People get used to seeing the little robot delivery carts. Once they get used to little robot delivery carts, they don't think so much about maybe robot trucks or and then as people just become used to it, people will start to say, well, why can't we have a robot car? I'd like to be able to sit in a little car like that and be taken. Whereas people, there's a lot of resistance in certain, segments, if you like, to that idea. Normalising it by delivering people's groceries that way, I think, is the start to getting it accepted as perfectly normal.
Yeah.
The last paragraph on the article from The Verge is quite interesting. It says, whether Fry's food store shoppers see a benefit from the driverless deliveries remains to be seen. Unlike a typical human-powered delivery vehicle, customers will need to walk to the curb to retrieve their groceries. In anticipation of everything using human-free delivery vehicles, the operators are certainly banking on the novelty of receiving produce, cold cuts, and 6-packs of beer from a vehicle that looks like a toaster on wheels in overcoming any initial feelings of inconvenience by the customers.
Oh, really? Oh, what a terrible inconvenience. I've had my food delivered, but I have to walk to the car to collect it.
Yeah, well, you might have to get wet, though, if it's raining. I mean, come on.
Oh, no, yeah. Well, no, laughing aside, of course, I suppose, if you're a disabled person or elderly or infirm, then, having somebody who can bring the groceries into your house is possibly of benefit.
But
yeah, it's just another option, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just build a little door in your garage, like an oversized doggy door that the little car can drive right into.
Oh, I like that idea.
Yeah. Well, perhaps we'll have people. Perhaps people will start if it becomes normalised. Perhaps people will build houses with a little docking bay on the side. The car can go in and open the door, and then you can open the hatch in your kitchen and just take the groceries out through the hatch. And then when it's done, it drives
like
away.
a little drive-through loop.
Yeah, and then when it's done, when you've unloaded it, it just drives off.
Or alternatively, a little bit like I'm not sure whether they still are, but the paper boys have traditionally used to be in America. They'll just have big springs on the inside of them, and when they get near, they'll just shoot them out.
Shoot it at your house. Yeah, I don't know. I've always wondered about that. Is that real? That American paper boys fling the newspapers at the door from the street, or is that a complete, Hollywood myth? I've no idea. I mean, whereas in this country, of course, paper boys traditionally just go along shoving them through the letterbox.
Letterboxes, yes.
Oh dear. Right. So going back from that, the new photos showing the depths of Apple's expanding Mesa, Arizona data center, which was on Apple Insider. I was a little disappointed in this because there weren't actually that many photographs. I don't know if you've looked at it. For those who don't know, the Mesa, Arizona data center was placed there because Apple came into possession of the facility because it belonged to the people who were going to make the sapphire glass. The facility, what does it say here exactly? Apple is generally cautious about sharing building details because of security concerns. Nevertheless, it acknowledged the center's global data command is staffed by a handful of people who work 10-hour shifts.
That's a lot of blades.
It's a lot of blades.
Wow.
Yeah, look at that. It says here the facility began its life under the aegis of First Solar, who said they were aiming for 600 workers, but that was never fully occupied, and it was taken over by the sapphire supplier GT Advanced Technologies. Then we all know what happened to that, and that left.
Oh, that was a bad deal.
Yeah, they went under as a result. They settled. And so Apple ended up in, possession of this facility, which they have turned into a data center. And apparently recently they have expanded with several new halls of machines. And yes, that is a lot of machines.
Notice the last phrase is offsetting the intense power demands at the centre is a solar plant in nearby Florence spanning some 300 acres.
Yeah, because I was going to
Jolly
say
good. That's what we like to hear.
that's what we like to hear because that data center no doubt draws a lot of power.
Yeah.
I have to say the middle picture was the one that intrigued me the most, and that was the shot of all the bays. It reminded me of nothing much more, to be honest, than the platform gates on a railway station.
A railway platform, yeah, that's the first thing I thought.
Yeah, platform 21, departing for. But yeah, unfortunately, there's only like the 3 pictures, which is, I suppose, in reality, every hall of every bay of the facility looks exactly the same. Hence the
I expect so.
rows of pillars with numbers on, so that you can locate anything. But there we go.
I think the employee ought to be on a Segway.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
something that size.
Or some other, or a Lime, was it Bird scooter or similar?
Yeah, yes.
Some such
He
micro
looks lonely walking down that corridor.
Yeah, perhaps I should just give him a skateboard. That would help, wouldn't it? Looks like good skateboarding surface. There we are. So, yes, interesting, but I was somewhat disappointed by the lack of pictures and the lack of depth in the article. But there we go. It's a short little snippet, and I assume that Apple must have other data centers. Well, we know they have other data centers, don't they? Yep. There we are. So moving on. Yes, and then the bad news of the week, of course, from the Apple point of view, a high school student in Australia, I believe, hacked into Apple servers and downloaded 90 gigabytes of secure files. This is all over the place. The one I've got is 9 to 5 Mac, and apparently this lad, he claims, his defence was that he didn't mean to do any harm. He was merely attempting to attract Apple's attention so they might offer him a job.
It's not just one hack. It says repeatedly hacked into Apple servers.
Yes, he reportedly accessed customer accounts. However, in the following stories, Apple have denied that is true. The Age reports hacks began when the boy, who cannot be named, was 16 years old and continued for some time. His access is said to include authorized keys which grant login access to users. Apple detected an unauthorized access, reported it to the FBI, who launched an investigation. When the source was traced to Australia, the Australian Federal Police joined what became an international investigation. A teen, who is said to be well known in the hacking community, used VPNs and other tools to try to avoid being traced by Apple's systems, logged the serial numbers of his MacBooks. There you go.
It says, amusingly, the downloaded material was saved in a folder titled Hacky Hack Hack.
Yes. The Hacky Hack Hack folder.
Yeah, if you were trying to hide, you wouldn't call it Hacky Hack Hack, would you?
No. The teen has pleaded guilty and will be sentenced next month. The lawyer, there we are. The student's lawyer said the boy carried out the attacks because he was a fan of the company and hoped to work there, a prospect which now seems somewhat unlikely.
This just goes on to show what the company I work for, their philosophy is, and that is that it's just a matter of time until you get hacked, until a company gets hacked. You can take as many precautions, you can be as security minded as the next man, or much better than the next man, but it's preparing and being ready for when you do get hacked is the truth of the matter.
Yes.
So it's disappointing that Apple have been, but well, that's life, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Some disgruntled high schooler's always going to find a way in.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or in this case, apparently, a star-struck teenager. Right. Apple have said in reply on recent revelations an Australian teen gained unauthorized access to its corporate computer network, saying the hack did not compromise customer data, despite reports claiming he had accessed customer accounts. The hacker collected some 90 gigabytes of secured files and accessed customer accounts, according to court statements. We wish to assure our customers that at no point during this incident was their personal data compromised. kind of contradict.
There's the lonely guy in the data center again, too.
Yes, I was going to say, they've got the same library pick of the bloke walking down the data center. There we are. Well, this tells you pretty much the same thing. Apple are saying no customer data was accessed, even though the boy had got 90 gigabytes of data. There we go.
There's a very, very long lot of comments after the article as well.
Oh yes, so there are
taking very, very, very opposite views. Some people saying, "Oh, come on, he didn't get anything valuable. He didn't sell anything. He didn't," and other people saying, he should be he should be incarcerated for the rest of his life. Yeah. Well, that's a very brief summary, obviously, of what's being said.
Yes, you're right. I'm just scrolling down some of it. Yeah. There we go. Well, I don't know what can you say? I'm with you on that one, Nick. Nothing is ever 100% secure, and you have to behave in a manner that it's not so much if, but when.
Yes, and you learn from the mistake. So whatever the mistake was that enabled him to get in, they plug it and keep an eye out for the next one, as it were.
Indeed. So that's that. And then we've got a whole bunch of security stories. So I think what we'll do, we'll take 5 to get some fresh cup of tea. Vic, I know you've got to go. So if you want to dip out, now's the time, I guess.
Alrighty.
Up to you.
No, sorry about that.
No, it's all right.
I feel really bad.
No, don't worry.
The wire problem that I think we wasted almost 15, 20 minutes on.
We did indeed.
I do feel terrible about it.
No, don't worry about it. It's not your fault. Something went horribly wrong. So,
thank you guys for having me, and I look forward to coming on again sometime when I've got more time for you.
No problem, Vic. No problem at all. So, would you like to just promote some of your podcasts before you go?
Yeah. You can always check out Bubblesort. We should hopefully have a new episode of that coming within a few days. I recently did an episode of Pocket Size Podcast with Scott. And we've launched today. We've actually launched a new Bubblesort TV podcast. You can find that at tv.bubblesort.show. We always enjoy talking about TV and stuff on Bubblesort, but we wanted a place where we can dive a little deeper into like individual episodes of TV shows we're watching and stuff, and we can have internet friends like Scott and Ronnie and other people come on and help us geek out about the TV shows with us, kind of drawing some inspiration from the Incomparables TV show.
Right, very good, excellent. Okay then, Vic. So thank you for coming on. Sorry you got to dash, but never mind. Me and Nick will take a short break. There's no John Nemo this week because he's off on vacation. So I'll play some interim music and we'll be back shortly.
Alrighty. See you guys next time.
Right, we're back. Vic is very sorry he's had to leave, but as he said, due to technical difficulties, he's run out of time. So in the break, Nick and I were having a look at the stories, and I think, actually, shall we go straight into the ARM announces its client CPU roadmap, Nick, and we'll look at the other bits later, because although there's quite a lot of security stuff, a lot of it's not really particularly stunningly interesting.
Yeah, so, why not?
Yes. So, ARM have announced their client CPU roadmap. And this, it says here, ARM unveils its first ever public CPU forward-looking roadmap and performance numbers. Client CPUs are expected to deliver year-on-year performance improvements of greater than 15% for compute through to 2020. Well, that's not actually... 15% year on year for the next 2.
But even so, that's quite some growth.
That's a big,
in comparison to all the other chips around.
Well, it's certainly a big. I mean, it's a long time since Intel
until back in the day when you used to get double the speed and double the power, and
yeah.
I mean,
yeah. When
we're long past that.
Yes, we are. The days when every iteration of the 486 were, brought massive leaps in computing power. Right, ARM is positioned for laptop share gain with a roadmap designed for 5G, always on, always connected devices. Similar, I guess, to that device we looked at the other week. According to them, over the last 5 years, advances in ARM technology have brought desktop-class PC performance into smartphones, fundamentally changing how we use technology.
Do you know, Simon? I mean, there are things that I see these days that that I look back on not that long ago, and I think that's incredible. I mean, there's an app available for the iPhone that takes PDF music and then basically turns it back into music and allows you to play back individual parts. So, say for instance, you've got a choral piece that's got a piano part, and it's got 4 individual lines: your soprano, alto, tenor, bass, and you can play back the individual lines from a PDF. Now, the power to do that a few years ago wasn't available even in a desktop machine.
No, I know.
I was gobsmacked when I found it. I just couldn't believe that they could do that on a phone, and really quickly. I mean, so we fed it a few songs just to see how it performed, and we were talking about 30 or 40 seconds, and it had actually completed that process. That was incredible.
It's unbelievable, isn't it?
I'm not surprised at all that ARM are talking about, delivering desktop performance. And why so many people are talking about the potential of an ARM-powered Mac.
Well, yeah, that's what came to mind, because the other link I've got here is a piece from Dennis Sellers, who's a writer I quite like. And he is basically taking a look from the roadmap and saying very much some of my thoughts. And that is, I've always been a bit wary of this, all this talk about an ARM-powered Mac. And my fear was, why would Apple want to go away from the mainstream? The whole thing with moving to Intel was kind of to,
that's been my position traditionally as well. Yeah.
But the way ARM are catching up or overtaking, the quote unquote traditional PC desktop architecture, I'm beginning to change my mind. And the other reason for that is obviously in this roadmap, and this is what Dennis Sellers picks up on as well, is that they are talking about pushing into laptops and expanding on their mobile. I mean, we know that ARM completely dominates the mobile world, but now they're saying they're talking about desktop class performance. So they're talking about pushing into laptops. And
I mean, we already know, don't we, that Apple have been disappointed by the speed at which Intel has been iterating its processors.
Oh, very much so. And
so if they can make this work,
well, what my thought is that I could see that Apple might want to do that, and I'm saying I've always been wary of that, because it would mean, or would appear to mean, going out on a limb and differentiating yourself in a way that might lead to a whole load of compatibility issues. But now what you're seeing is, we were already seeing ARM-powered, ultralight laptops, and, the first 5, quote-unquote, 5G always connected devices. And I mean, we talked about one the other week. And if people, other manufacturers start producing ARM-powered devices in that space, and we know that Microsoft are saying they're not averse to, porting Windows to run on ARM devices.
I think the other thing is possibly, I mean, this is something we were talking about a little before we came back from the break, was that perhaps the number of switches that are around now is fewer, and as a consequence, they've got less to lose, as it were. If they moved away from Intel,
there is that, but I'm thinking that maybe there's actually an industry-wide shift, because if manufacturers like, say, Asus or Lenovo or whoever start putting out ARM-powered laptop devices, then
Yeah.
basically
Then that would really change the
would change the whole
really
ball
change
game, because it would not mean Apple being the only ones going out and saying we're going to go on an ARM powered device. They maybe Apple would be the first to bring out an ARM powered desktop. Maybe they wouldn't, but I just get the feeling that the whole industry is beginning to get a bit less tied to Intel. I think there's a certain amount of frustration with the iterations. Certainly the last few, Intel have said, oh well, there'll be was it KB late and Coffee late, and they're all running late. They've all ended up being a year or 18 months behind schedule. Now, I'm not saying that I'm not saying that constructing these things is simple. I mean, there are only a few people in the world who even understand how it's done. But at the same time, an industry like like the computer industry, the technology industry, if they're tied to one horse, as it were, and the horse is getting tired, they have to start thinking
it also brings to your attention that in the last earnings call that they're actually selling less computers now. And it makes you wonder whether actually Apple have got their eyes on other things.
I think they may well have. I
think as an Apple computer user, I'd like to think that was the case, because that would be quite exciting, I think. But again, it's another one of these. We'll wait and see. But I like you, I am now a little more convinced, having been completely against the idea of an ARM chip driven Mac. I'm now beginning to think,
well, I won't say I was ever completely against it.
No. Like me, I just thought it was a little impractical.
Yes,
considering the Intel backward compatibility stuff.
Yes, I suspect that Apple, I have no doubt that Apple have ARM-powered Macs running, Mojave or whatever, in the same ways that
the millions of dollars of R&D.
I have absolutely no doubt of that whatsoever, and in the same ways that they do with Intel. But I suspect possibly, I can't, claim to read Uncle Tim's mind, but I would think possibly for the same reasons that's maybe why they're holding back. And almost, people quite often say Apple don't always lead, but they often, then come, they might start second, but then they power forward with it. I could see now that maybe if other people in the industry start producing ARM-powered machines, that it would no longer be something that people would point at Apple and go, "Oh my God, look at Apple! What on earth are they doing?"
Yes, and let's face it, we're living in a very different world, software-wise, to what we were when I first bought my iMac back in 2007 for my first iMac. Back in those days, there was more software written for the Mac, but it wasn't all-encompassing. Whereas these days, it's hard to find stuff that's written for the PC that isn't also written for the Mac. So you've got less of a, even if you are coming from a PC side, you've got less of a change, really. Your operating system's a little different, but effectively all your programs are still there.
Yes. I obviously, because of what I do for a job, I'm going to be one of those truck drivers that Steve referred to, and there are people like Alex, who was on last week, who we rely on that big screen estate, the dual screens, the mouse. We are never going to go away. An iPad is never going to be able to do what we want.
No,
from our devices.
I agree, and I think that Apple have reiterated many times that they're still interested in computers.
Oh yeah,
they might not be quite as interested in computers as they once were, but they still have that interest.
Oh yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, we are going to become a niche. I think very much a niche market.
Yeah.
The general purpose. There's a piece here which I read earlier today, and I hadn't put in the show notes, but I'm going to put in now, and that is the year that Windows died at home and nobody cared, which was on ZNet. And what they're saying here is, the traditional home PC it is very much, in decline.
I think that's
like
true.
me, Nick, grew up before people had PCs at home. And then people started, having a PC at home was a luxury, and then having a PC at home was considered as pretty much as normal as having a TV. And then maybe people started having more than one PC. Then we got laptops. Then everybody had laptops. But despite all that, the smartphone has, I think, for many people, decimated their need to use a desktop.
Yeah,
many...
yeah, I'd agree. I mean, the fact is, I mean, I have an iMac, but I use it for podcasting and for doing my desktop publishing, and that's pretty much it. Everything else happens on either my iPad or on my phone.
Yeah, so this article, which is worth a read, it's not particularly long. While Microsoft's desktop operating system continues to be a key fixture of enterprise computing environments, it faces extinction at home, and Redmond seems perfectly fine with that. It's, as I say, not a terribly long piece, but there's a piece near the end here. The PC usefulness is reaching its end game. In the home, note the emphasis, the usefulness of the personal computer, including Apple's Mac systems, is reaching endgame. There exists an entirely new category of computing users who do not even own a personal computer. Whilst difficult to correlate, taking into consideration declining sales and effectively flat growth of PCs and the huge market saturation of the smartphone, overall usage seems to indicate that people not only do more on their smartphones, but may be using them almost exclusively as a primary computing platform. And I believe that's very much true for an awful lot of people.
Yeah.
That is what they need. Why did people have computers at home? Originally, possibly to play games, and after that, to access the internet. And when everybody can get to the internet from that little piece of glass in their pocket, for many people, that hulking great PC in the corner of the living room or in the bedroom becomes redundant. So
yes, so Apple's all that time ago saying, this is the beginning of the end for the PC. They weren't that far wrong, were they?
I think, everybody said, the PC won't go away. But I've said before, even a lot of people said, oh, the PC, lives in the enterprise. But I suspect, in reality, there's an awful lot of people who do things for their work which do not really require the full-blown power of a desktop PC.
Oh, no, that's right.
What are they doing? They're shifting documents from place to place and writing emails and doing so on, and that could be done on either...
The company I work for, almost their whole estate is virtualized, and everyone's running on fairly low-powered PCs, apart from the few that need something a bit more chunkier to crunch lots of data. But the vast majority are running on very simple stuff because, let's face it, even in the workplace, the vast majority of people use Word and perhaps Excel and email and maybe one or two social networks these days.
Exactly.
That's about it, really.
You could be running that on very lightweight hardware. You really could.
Yeah.
I mean, probably the biggest thing I think that keeps the desktop PC on a lot of people's desks is the screen. Access to a decent sized screen so that you don't end up with the eye strain because you're staring at a tiny little screen for 8 hours.
Yeah, and if you work in IT, it's useful to have a couple of screens because you may want to have two different virtualized machines running at the same time, and you might want to get data from one to another. And I can understand the need for screen estate, but that isn't necessarily computing, or it isn't computing power at all. I mean, it's just just convenience, really.
Yes, it is. Yeah, definitely. So there we go. There's a couple. So as a result of that, I think we both agreed actually that I am now somewhat less skeptical of the possible appearance of an ARM-powered Mac, because the benefits could start to outweigh the downsides.
I hope the emulator people are already starting to look at at re-engineering their stuff.
But then again, if Windows are already saying that they're building ARM.
Oh, that's true. Perhaps we'll all end up running the. Who knows?
If they start running ARM based Windows, then it would probably not be any more difficult for people like VirtualBox to write an ARM based version of that. and we'll be back where we started. That's what I'm saying. If everybody starts doing it, or at least everybody's mixing and matching, so that there's, much as they had 32-bit and 64-bit, and sort of some of it crossed over and some of it didn't. If you start saying, well, we've got some, you can have ARM, and here's a version of Windows that runs on ARM, then
exactly,
then the whole industry changes. The whole ball game is thrown wide open, I would say. So there we go.
And not only that, I mean, even the hardware that's local for businesses is becoming less and less now. With a lot of companies are going cloud first, and all their stuff's moving into the cloud anyway.
Well, a lot of I say a lot, but it is available certainly for corporations to have these basically what they for a while were called web tops, but you have a virtualized PC, and it's hosted by Amazon or somewhere, and you pay, and you can have, effectively, you're renting a permanently updated, perfectly top of the line computer, and it's fed to you down your fiber optic.
Yes, and you'll be able to say, yes, I haven't got a computer at home, but I do have a computer in a data center in Arizona.
Exactly. And when web tops first came out, there were a few that you could play around with for free, and I experimented with them. Most of them.
Oh yes, so did I. Yeah, they were interesting, weren't they?
Cloud Me, I think, and something like that, and they gradually all just went away, probably because whether they were just proof of concepts or whether they didn't. There was at the time no real use for such a thing.
Yeah, I think the enterprise will definitely move that way. But home computers, I can still see staying home computers, and there will always be people who will want home computers. Maybe not everybody, but
I just think yes, it won't.
A few out there who will still want one.
It will no longer, but it will go back to being, if you like, a slightly specialist thing.
Yeah.
Rather than the sort of the what we might look back on as the age of the personal computer, when it was a computer on every desk and a computer in every home, and it will be a computer in every pocket. It's just a different sort of computer. So
how things have changed.
Indeed, how things have changed. It's almost within half a lifetime.
Yes.
The rise and fall of the PC, almost, not of computing, but the PC itself.
Yeah.
There we are. Pretty amazing stuff. Right. What shall we have a look at now then, Nick?
Do you want to go back to security and have a look at security?
Yes, have a look at some of the security stories, and then I think perhaps we'll just wind it up, don't you?
Sounds good to me.
Okay. There's one here. Hackers can compromise your network just by sending a fax. Now, my initial
fax?
A fax? Who the bloody hell is using a fax machine? But of course,
it's not the kind of thing you'd try. I mean, actually trying to buy a fax is probably difficult these days, and actually buying one specifically to hack with seems a little bit of a long-winded way of going round.
Yes. However, of course, sending faxes, you can send faxes from computers quite easily, I guess. So that's not. As it says here, you might be thinking, who uses fax these days? Well, fax is not a thing of the past. There are 300 million fax numbers and 45 million fax machines in use globally.
Goodness gracious.
Yes, fax is popular. Fax is popular among several business organisations, regulators, lawyers, bankers, real estate firms. I do believe that the NHS is quite big on fax machines for sending. Although I believe that they've been told they've got to basically clear them out because they're archaic and insecure. Apparently, it says here, what is the maximum damage a remote hacker can do just by having your fax machine number? Believe it or not, your fax machine number is literally enough for a hacker to gain complete control over the printer and then possibly infiltrate the rest of the network. Checkpoint researchers have revealed details of 2 critical remote code execution vulnerabilities. Right, as it says, most fax machines today are integrated in all-in-one printers connected to a Wi-Fi network and a phone line. A remote hacker can simply send a specially crafted image file via fax to exploit the reported vulnerabilities, seizing control of the enterprise or home network.
Oh, I see. So basically, the people receiving the email, the fax,
Yes.
The machine at the other end will say, "Oh, hold on a minute, this is a fax. I need to send it to a computer," and that's where the vulnerabilities are.
Well, it would appear that what it involves buffer overflow vulnerabilities.
Well, I can imagine that because no one will be updating this software very often, will they?
No. Which leads to remote code execution. Demonstrating it, Eyal Itkin used a popular HP OfficeJet Pro all-in-one fax printer, the 6830 and the OfficeJet Pro 8720. And there's a video here. The researchers send an image file which is loaded with a malicious payload. As soon as the fax machine receives it, the image is decoded and uploaded into the fax printer memory. Using Eternal Blue and Double Pulsar exploits, leaked from the NSA, of course, they then take over the connected machine and spread malicious code through the net. So there you go. I think it's a bit like the...
It sounds like old technology that we've forgotten about, but the software is still there to cause problems.
And I think it's working on a similar kind of way to the... some years ago, there was an outbreak of malicious JPEGs, wasn't there? You could maliciously craft JPEGs. And then, of course, they distributed them by saying, sending out pictures of, so-and-so, naked pictures of such and such, and people would hopefully click on it by social engineering, and thus there was malicious code inside the JPEG parser, and boom, you were infected with something.
I would imagine for most companies, this isn't that much of a problem. I would imagine just disabling the fax queue completely.
Well, of course, I guess, these people who do use it, I guess, rely on it.
Yeah.
It says here
I'm quite surprised by that figure, though. I don't think I've seen a fax machine and I know they're built into printers, but I haven't seen a fax machine for many years.
I guess that the thing is that the sort of industries who use them, they're probably hidden away. You wouldn't. Whereas once upon a time, every office you went into, the fax machine was proudly displayed, wasn't it, along with the the office computer and the photocopier. Now, I guess, and quite possibly, of course, there is not a fax machine in the sense that you and I would think of it, where you actually put a piece of paper in and it's scanned and sent.
Yes, it'll be part of a printer.
It's either part of a printer, or more likely, it's actually just being used like remote printing, isn't it? You create your letter on Word, and then you do fax, and it says type in the number, and then off it goes, and is sent to an actual printer somewhere which has fax type capabilities built in.
Is this hacker what's the phrase I'm after? It's not in the wild, is it? This is just a proof of concept type thing.
At the moment, it's a demonstration.
It's researchers, isn't it?
Yes, it's a researcher. What does it say? It's a demo, so it's a proof that it can be done using a variety of exploits and vulnerabilities.
No doubt there will be fixes out in due course.
It says, we believe that this security risk should be given special attention by the community, changing the way that modern network architectures treat network printers and fax machines. And I think they're talking about the security community. And I think what they're really saying is, these don't think of these devices as dumb terminals on the end of your network. They can be, they're not, are they? Nothing's a dumb terminal anymore.
No, true. Either that or just keep it plugged into the phone line, but not your network.
Yes. Yes. Checkpoint researchers responsibly disclosed their findings to Hewlett-Packard, who have fixed the flaws in its all-in-one printers and have deployed firmware patches. Patches available on HP's support page. So if you have a HP all-in-one fax type thing, go get the update.
I do indeed. So I suppose I ought to do that.
The researchers, well, only if you've got it plugged into the phone line, of course, Nick. If you're not actually using
I've got it connected wirelessly with that.
No,
I have got it plugged into the phone line. Good point. Yeah.
But whether or whether you actually use it as a fax, but it probably wouldn't hurt to download the patch anyway. The researchers believe the same vulnerabilities could also impact most fax-based all-in-one printers sold by other manufacturers. In the Slack room, I think it was Allister who said, do they use a common library? And otherwise, I don't see how it works. But I think you'll find the problem is that fax is a standard in and of itself. And
so it's its own protocol, isn't it?
Yeah, and it would appear a bit like the JPEG parser that we were talking about. You send the correctly maliciously crafted fax information and overflow the memory and get code execution. There we go. So that was that one. There's another one here. Invisible mouse clicks let hackers burrow deep into Mac OS, and this was on Wired. Now, this sounds quite scary until you actually. Right, this one, what they're saying here is the user interface is a single point of failure. If you have a way to synthetically interact with alerts, you have a very powerful and generic way to bypass security mechanisms. And what they're talking about here is, the way that they, for example, Apple script, you can tell it to, press the OK button for you in a string of in a string of commands to script a program. You can say and click OK and do this and do that.
Yeah, it's a little bit like Excel. When you're running VBA, you can turn the screen off so it doesn't update the screen.
Yeah, so it says here, Mac OS includes a feature that lets some programs like AppleScript generate synthetic clicks, a mouse click which are generated by the program rather than the human finger, which allow features like automation and usability tools for the disabled. So then it goes on to say that synthetic clicks can be used for malicious intent, blah, 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 as you might expect. However, what you get down to in the end is this can only be made use of if your machine has already been compromised. So, not that Apple shouldn't address the problem. He's saying in certain places synthetic clicks are being allowed where he believes they, shouldn't be. Apple responded by patching Wardle's mouse key hack, but when he later tried testing ways to get around the patch, he stumbled into a stranger bug. A synthetic click includes the down command and an up command, which correlate to clicking a mouse and releasing it. He accidentally pasted the wrong snippet of code so that he performed 2 down commands. And when he ran that code, the operating system mysteriously translated the second down into an up.
I must admit, I've read that twice now, and I still don't understand.
Oh yes, I see. Right, there's a push, there's a click and release. It would probably be easier to say that, wouldn't it?
Yes.
The command is, press and release. But if you do press, which of course isn't a real thing, the system interprets it as down, up. Wardle discovered that down synthetic clicks are not blocked when used on an allow prompt installing a kernel extension. Ooh, right.
Okay.
Yes, which is
That's
bad.
not good.
No, that is not good. But then
I'm sure Apple will fix it in due course.
Yes. Wardle concedes synthetic click attacks do not exactly offer instant access to the Mac's inner sanctum. In certain hackers' hands, they could be a dangerous tool. He argues they're part of a repeating pattern of Apple's recent security sloppiness. Okay. But overall, what it says is if malware got in and made use of this, it can use it to do quite a lot of damage. But all that really says is if your machine's been compromised with a script, all the game's up. Really, and that's much the same. If your machine is compromised, then anything is game, isn't it? So it's not good news by any means, but it's not actually as scary as it sounds. A malware could use that to do harm, but the malware.
A lot of security stories are really about making it as hard as possible for people to break stuff, and therefore get in. And if you can stop them getting in the first place, then that's probably the best defense of all.
Well, yeah, because all these things are, once your machine is compromised, when I read that, I won't say I immediately throw up my hands and go, oh, why didn't you say that in the first place? Because once your machine is compromised, as far as I'm concerned, the game is over.
Yes.
So that's why something like the fax attack is actually more worrying to me than the fact that scripting can press buttons in your interface.
Yeah, it's a little bit like reading through a whole article, which sounds really bad, and when it gets to the end, it sort of says, and of course, yes, this person has to actually be sitting at your machine to actually do it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Those ones.
Okay. If they're sitting at my machine, well, I probably don't own it anymore.
Yeah, that's usually. I'm usually when you get to those, I'm usually of the opinion. Yeah, well, not only once a attacker has physical access to your machine, the game is up. But also, if a physical attacker has hold of your machine, you probably have bigger problems than him getting into your machine.
Yes,
Truth be told.
precisely.
There we are. We were talking the other week, weren't we, about Verizon and their privacy protecting VPN for secure Wi-Fi, and
Yes, and whether you trust your ISP to be control your VPN or not. Yeah.
Yes, precisely. And I think our only thing was it's probably better at the coffee shop than no VPN whatsoever.
Yes.
However, there's an article on Motherboard. Verizon didn't bother to write a privacy policy for its privacy-protecting VPN. Verizon's Safe Wi-Fi says it protects privacy and blocks ad tracking, but its privacy policy is a placeholder and says exactly the opposite. And yeah, basically, the privacy and security says that it's based on the McAfee privacy notice, and explains McAfee's policies, which basically says we have the right to gather all the information about we can. So then, as it goes on to say, please know that Verizon have responded and said that's an error, and please know that the Verizon nor McAfee collect any personal data regarding users on the Safe Wi-Fi VPN. But that's not what the current privacy policy states. And if this is more than an incorrect placeholder, how exactly is an end user supposed to know what is actually being collected?
Yeah.
Until then, you'll have to trust Verizon, but Verizon's track record suggests it's the last company you'd want to watch your back. And then there's a fairly long piece about all the bad things that Verizon have been involved in, which seem to mostly be around attempting to destroy your privacy.
Yes, I must admit, if you're the kind of person who feels that you need a VPN, I don't run a VPN at home. I sometimes have a VPN I switch on my kit when I'm in a hotel or whatever that has whatever Wi-Fi. But if you are someone who's going to use VPN, you're probably going to know which VPN you're going to use, and you're unlikely to use just your default ISP's VPN.
No, this is true. But of course, what it does say here, and this is something I do agree with you. Thanks to barely meaningful US privacy rules, your ISP already has an ocean of data on you, collected whether you use a VPN or not. It is now seemingly impossible to go more than a week without seeing another major privacy scandal. In many instances, government appear less interested in protecting you than making money. In response, worried customers are increasingly flocking to VPNs in a bid to protect their private data.
Oh, that's interesting.
This said fear has provided a wonderful marketing opportunity for VPN providers. Some of which, like private internet access, bought full-page ads last year, naming and shaming senators who sold you out on privacy. A VPN isn't a magic bullet, and our privacy woes go far deeper. Blah, blah, blah. Often, VPN provider claims that they don't retain user logs have proven to be false, and ferreting out which company is actually protecting your data can border on the impossible. Some VPN providers have turned out to be little more than a scam. Other times they are poorly configured and run, and you would be more secure not using them. The fear has resulted in rising VPN offerings from more mainstream names which shouldn't be inherently trusted, i.e. Verizon. And Facebook's VPN Anavo, for example, has been widely and correctly ridiculed as a data hoovering application dressed up as a security tool. So it comes down to what we've said over and over again when we talk about VPNs. You have to trust your VPN in much the same way as you have to trust your doctor. And that means if you're going to use one, do some decent research, I think, and make sure you're happy with what they're offering you, which is why
and if you're happy with just giving your information away anyway, then don't worry about using a VPN.
Well, yes, in which case there's no point using a VPN. Well, actually, that's not strictly true because it prevents man-in-the-middle attacks at free Wi-Fi, which whether you want to give away your information, you might not want somebody stealing your bank account. Let's face
it, the man in the street isn't going to know what a VPN is, are they?
Not at the moment, although it is
maybe one day.
It is becoming, because lots of people keep banging on about it. So, I agree with that piece about, heavy marketing by VPNs, because I'm constantly getting these ones of get a lifetime of VPN protection for $50, and it's like, I don't see how that's possibly going to work unless you're monetizing my data, in which case you are the last VPN.
Here's an interesting,
I would use.
An interesting related question. Has Tunnel Bear stopped doing a free allowance?
No, not that I'm
No,
aware of. No.
because the last time I went to look at it, I couldn't find a way of getting, a free my free chunk. I can't remember how much it was.
Well, it used to be a gig, didn't it? And they used to give you 500 for free. And then there was a tweet. What's this say here? Get free data. Put a bear in your computer, or bring a bear, or tweet about Tunnel Bear, which gives you 1 gigabyte once
that's right.
per month.
That's right. They expect you to tweet about it now before they allow you it. Yeah.
Well, they always did. You used to get 500 per month free.
I'm not sure that they always did, didn't they?
Yeah. Well, as long as
Right.
I've been using it or used it, you have to do a tweet saying I'm using a bear, and then they send you a gig of free bandwidth.
Oh, right. Okay. I must have done it without thinking about it.
Yeah, probably. Well, because all you have to do is it says, do you want to tweet? You tweet and just press OK, and it does it. You don't actually have to write a tweet or anything, do you? You just
No.
tap it, and the bear spits out a little blue bird that flies away, and then they say, "Here's your free data."
Fair enough.
So yes, they're still doing that. Obviously, Tunnel Bear are no longer independent, which is I'm not going to say that I wouldn't use them because they were very good, and I have seen nothing to take the shine off so far. What I'd like to, if Tunnel Bear do another, external audit and make it public like they've done in the past, then I would go back to having no qualms whatsoever about recommending Tunnel Bear. As everybody knows here, I use Proton VPN as well as Proton Mail, and Andy J, our resident expert in data forensics and so on, he relies on private internet access. So I think at the moment the top 3 recommendations are probably Tunnel Bear, private internet access, and Proton, from my point of view, of course. But if you're going to use a VPN, as we've said over and over again, do your research. Don't just buy some cheapo VPN because it's probably worthless.
Yes.
Okay. Google tracks your movements whether you like it or not.
Why are we surprised by this?
We are not really surprised by this, are we? I won't go into it to any great depth. There's an AP exclusive. It's probably now all over the web. It's probably been regurgitated endlessly. Basically, when you turn off location history, this only prevents Google from adding your movements to its timeline, a visualization of your daily travels. If you really want to try and stop them, you have to also turn off web and app activity in the settings. They've tried to claim that they're quite clear about what turning off location history says and does, but quite a lot of American lawyers appear to disagree with them. So they may be...
Yeah, it sounds a little bit disingenuous, doesn't it?
Yes, there's one of the lawyers has said, basically, if you have a switch called location history, then it is not unreasonable for a user to expect it to turn off location tracking. And the fact that you then said,
Yes.
we kind of track your location through your web and app activity as well, is indeed, I think, underhand. So there you go. Be warned, if you use Google and you don't want them tracking your movements, you need to turn off both web and app activity and your location history. There we go. That's today's public service announcement. There's a piece here from the Cult of Mac which says that this seems a bit behind the times from them, to be honest, but it says it turns out iOS 12 isn't safe from brute force iPhone unlocks, and they are, of course, talking about the Grey key from Grey Shift, and they say here Apple put a feature in the first iOS beta designed to specifically thwart iPhone unlocking tools using the Lightning port to get access to the device. But Grey Shift, the maker of a prominent unlocking tool, says it has a workaround. Blah, blah, blah. Grey Shift has gone to great lengths to future-proof their technology and stated they already defeated this security feature in the beta build. Right, now, Andy J in the Slack room sent me a couple of weeks ago an invitation to a webinar on data forensics, recovering data from an iPhone using the Grey key and a tool called Magnet Axiom, which is the tool which actually extracts, the data that the forensic people wish to get at. The grey key unlocks it, and then this Magnet Axiom extracts the data.
Yeah.
They were. It was very interesting. Very interesting. It wasn't a particularly long thing, and it wasn't, industry either. Wasn't restricted. Anyone could go to it. So, I wasn't sneaking into some industry insider work. They were quite clear as far as I could understand it, and it wasn't, couched in particularly complicated terms, that the as far as they're concerned, if the machine, the device has been locked and the USB, block has been put on, they are in a great deal of trouble. They're not saying they can't extract anything from the phone, but they are. It makes life, 10 times more difficult. If they can get to the phone in time, they talked about they've got some tools, things, we've mentioned this before. They've said that certain USB devices plugged into the phone will prevent the restricted mode from activating. They talked about ways that you can extend the time that you have before the USB restricted mode will come on, but they were quite clear that if USB restricted mode had been turned on, that unlocking the phone was almost impossible. So
that's interesting. It does seem a little bit bonkers, really, to me, that Apple say if your phone is locked, they're going to have real difficulty getting in now because we've put in stuff to stop it, and then someone comes along and says, yeah, but if we get to it before it's unlocked, then we can stop it locking.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but that's something different.
Yeah. Well, you have to understand that the webinar was by this company, Magnet, using this Axiom software, and they were quite clear. We are not Grey Key. We do not have access to, inside of Grey Key. They were quite clear that what we're talking about here is you use it, you as investigators use the Grey Key to get into a device, and then you use our software to pull information out. And it was very enlightening what data they can and cannot extract. But the piece that was most enlightening to me was to talk about the things the Grey Key can do, things the Grey Key cannot do, and what the USB restricted mode does and doesn't do. And they were fairly clear about the fact that if USB restricted mode has been turned on and is fully active, then your chances of getting into the phone are vastly reduced. The other thing that came to light was, yes, the Grey Key. What you do with the Grey Key is it's inserted into the phone. It injects some kind of code onto the phone, which then starts a brute force attack. You can then disconnect the phone and leave it to, churn away until it unlocks the phone.
It really is very much of a seesaw, isn't it? Apple are constantly saying, we've done patches, we've made it better, it's more secure, and there are a whole host of people out there who are trying to say, or are working to actually make it less secure, and it's just this big seesaw backwards and forwards.
Well, of course, it was because it's quite interesting listening to this webinar, because it was being given by people who obviously work with law enforcement. They're talking about getting into phones of criminals to retrieve evidence, to find, track people's movements, maybe, murder cases, whatever.
But as I've heard Bart say so many times, if you create a backdoor for the baddies, you create a backdoor for everybody.
Exactly.
If you create a backdoor, you create a backdoor for everybody, including the baddies.
Precisely. And but the one thing that they pointed out was that the Grey Key can crack a 4-digit code. Not that most phones have. You can't have a 4-digit code by default anymore. You have to have at least 6. But they can crack that pretty swiftly. They can crack a 6-digit code, within a couple of days. But what they pointed out is if somebody has used a proper complex password, chances are even the Grey Key won't be able to get into it, or not in a time that's worth worrying about. It could take years. Because
really good.
If it's so, again, it comes back down to the same old thing. If you're worried about it, use a proper password. There we go. It was quite enlightening. It was also quite frightening how much information they can get out of your phone if it's if they can unlock it but not do much else. They can still extract a huge amount of data.
Oh, interesting.
And I think my overall view of that was very much that I guess something like the grey key is indeed a very grey area, and if it's held, if it's used correctly with, judicial oversight and a proper warrant and all the rest, I don't have a problem with it, with law enforcement using it to attempt to get into a criminal's phone. The danger is always, of course, that there are countries in this world who are not as law-abiding or so on. And we've talked about that before. So there we are.
What was the name of?
Sorry,
I was going to say, in the words of the late great, what was his name? Taylor. He was on ITV. Oh, no, not Sean. I'm not going to be able to remember his name now. He used to have a saying at the end of his. He used to do the sort of news about crime, and he'd say, "Keep them peeled."
Shaw Taylor.
Shaw Taylor, that was his name.
He used to do crime, not Crime Watch. What was it called?
Oh, now you're asking.
Yeah,
I don't remember, but it was that. It does make me think that that after all our security things, we ought to have a keep them peeled.
That's it. Keep them peeled, people. There we are. So it, that headline there, it turns out iOS 12 isn't safe from brute force unlockers is not strictly true.
But maybe one day.
Yeah. Well,
the way this news goes.
Well, to some extent, these people. The implication was if the restricted mode has been turned fully on, they're pretty much locked out, and there's very
scuppered.
There is stuff they can still pull out of the phone, but not a lot. Once it's unlocked, there's a certain amount, and so on and so forth. Well, we've been going quite a while, so worth the chirps. Protecting your data from camera to archive. This is from the Backblaze blog. Allister Jenks sent that one in. There's a link to that about how to protect your camera data by sending it to Backblaze. And we were talking about the AirPower. Inverse have one here. AirPower clone hits the market for a fraction of Apple's reported cost. That's AirPower clone hits the market. It's about half the rumoured price of the AirPower. And it looks like very much like an AirPower, and it will charge your Apple Watch, your iPhone, and your AirPod case when such a thing is available. There we go. It is important to note that Apple has patented a large portion of its wireless charging technology. So while this might look extremely similar to a long-awaited AirPower, it isn't actually the same on the inside. And rumours have alluded to the possibility that Apple's charging pad will contain as many as 22 coils, which should allow it to not only charge a lot of devices, but ensure they reliably charge overnight. However, if you really want one right now, this is available for only $79, which is roughly half of the $150 price tag reports suggest the AirPower will go for. There you go.
Very good. Or alternatively, you could just plug them in.
Yes, indeed. You could,
or use the watch.
Yeah, well, the watch thing that you get, the magnetic watch thing. Anyway, I really do not find plugging in my lightning cable at night to be such terrible tyranny, I must admit. I don't have AirPods, and at the minute, of course, the AirPods case, you'll have to buy a new one anyway, won't you? The standard one.
Yes, you can't use the existing. Yeah.
No, so there we are. Well, Nick, I reckon that'll do us, don't you? We've been going quite a long time.
Yeah, I do.
We'll do the shout-outs then, shall we? You are, of course...
I am, of course, what?
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry. I am Spligosh, SPLIGOSH on Twitter. That's about it, really.
No, that's fair enough. I, of course, am on the Twitter as @Serenak, and that's SERENAK. The show is Essential Apple. The website is essentialapple.com. And, of course, if you want to join in the chatter in the Slack room, just look in the show notes or on the website and follow the link. You will now find that we are available on Spotify, Soundcloud, and, thanks to some help from Allister Jenks, without whom I could not have figured it out, YouTube. Woo! So, thanks all for listening, and goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Essential Apple Podcast, and I'd like to say if you enjoy the show and would like to support us, feel free to go over to the website essentialapple.com and you will find links to both Patreon and the Pinecast Tips Jar, where you can make a donation towards the costs of the show, or even if you're really keen, you could set up a recurring payment. And thank you very, very much to all the people who already do support us. We really do appreciate you very much indeed. This show is, of course, part of the My Mac podcasting network, where you can find a variety of other shows like the My Mac podcast with Guy and Gaz, the G-Men, Tech Fan with Tim and David, the Nintendo Club podcast, the geekiest show ever, the Three Geeky Ladies, Bart Bouchot's and his wonderful Let's Talk Apple, and possibly some more that I've forgotten. So why not go over to mymac.com, take a look at the available podcasts, and take a listen.
Yeah, I think just a straight ad, don't you?
Yeah.
Like what? What would we say? Like Tech Fan Podcast or?
Are you interested in technology and gadgets?
Uh-huh.
Do you want to listen to two guys who know technology and gadgets?
Are we claiming to be those guys?
Yes. Well, there we go. Are we claiming to be those guys? You be the judge. Tech Fan Podcast.
No, that'll work. Let's use that as an ad.
Okay.
Hello.
Hello. Hello, Vic. Got no Vic.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Have I knocked him out?
I don't know. Well, I wasn't talking to him. I hadn't
Oh, I
rung
see.
anybody. I
Oh.
hadn't rung anybody. I was just I'll try again. Hello.
Yeah, you got me still.
I've got you. I've only got one on call.
Yeah.
Oh, let's have a look. Vic.
Do then.
You know, oh, here he is.
Ah, two on call. Jolly
Two on
good.
call. Hello, Vic. Right, I'll give
Maybe.
it a try again. Right. Hello. Hello. Right.
Come on, wire. Do your thing.
Yeah. Come on. Come on. It worked perfectly last time he came on. Oh, Vic shared a picture.
So he did. Oh, it's going black for him.
Right.
That's the thing on the right, I expect. Is it?
Quit.
Is that wire on the right? It looks like it.
No, he's got that's on the right, yeah.
They're very strange.
Well, when wire decides to play up. Hello, Vic. Can you hear us? Is there anybody out there? It says he's on the call though.
It does, yeah. Two on call. I can drop that down, presumably, can I?
Well,
He's gone.
Oh.
Perhaps he's restarted it.
He's on call to me.
Oh, I can only see you now.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to quit wire, which will kill
Okay.
it all, and come back in and see if that helps.
Right you are.
Oh, very bizarre. If you can't get it going, we can always fall back to Skype, I suppose. I shan't bother with Discord. It seems to be more bloody trouble than it's worth. Yeah, but either he can't hear us or we can't hear him. Right, I am... Right, so, Skype opening. Probably need to, what are you, Spligosh, I guess? Hello. Right, let me sure I get that recording. Where's Vic? Still got no Vic. No. Well, if we have to do a show with just you and me, because he's going to have to... He told me he'd only got... Oh, he's here. He's here. I don't know what that was all about. Right. I don't know. That's strange. It does. I mean, one thing I can say about wire is when it works well. But if it decides it's going to get the ump, it royally.
Check for update in its little menu bar item or anything. So I don't know what's going on there.
Right. Can you guys
So,
hear me?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Vic?
I hear you. Hold on
Okay.
a second. Something's going on with the...
Yeah, you went a bit quiet there.
I'm trying to figure out why my screen's... Something's got my whole screen seems to be disabled. Got a gray tint over it. Like I've hit one of the hot corners and it won't release.
Ooh, weird. Because I know all I've got at the moment is the sort of weird blue and, the Skype screen with a weird blue and orange fade on it.
So the only window that I can interact with is the little call recorder window. I can't move anything. I can't drag anything.
How very bizarre.
It's like it's trying to do expose or something.
How very strange. Right, well, it's working, so I think what we should do is just go for it.
Oh, well, we can do that. I should tell you up front that I'm unable to press my record button, though.
Oh, don't worry about that. This has been the Essential Apple Podcast. Goodbye, and thank you for listening.